Now what we're watching is the fish just exploring the tank. Then what we'll see next is we'll see them start to find their favourite spots. Now they may get a little bit territorial about their favourite spots because they may want to tell everyone else that's where they live, and they also may be a little bit territorial in regards to working out who's going to be dominant and all that sort of stuff, because they work that out and it doesn't always go the way you think. Like you might think one fish should be dominant over another fish, but then you find that that's really not the case because they work it out themselves. And it's not uncommon for fish to hide a fair bit at the start, particularly when there's not many fish. So at the moment they're in their little exploring phase, but if suddenly they start hiding a little bit, I don't think that's too unusual. Now it's also really common for a new tank to be a little bit cloudy. And the reason why a new tank is a little bit cloudy is there's various types of bacteria that grow. And in a new aquarium like this one, what we're wanting is the growth of the good bacteria that's in the filter. And the good bacteria that's in the filter will make the water crystal clear. But sometimes the good bacteria in the filter is not the fastest bacteria to grow. Sometimes the bacteria that grows in the water is the fastest. So therefore, the fish can be totally healthy and the water can be a little bit cloudy. But the bacteria that grows in the water tends to be a fairly short-term bacteria, and it tends to die off and get replaced by the good bacteria that grows in the filter. So the cloudy water tends to be a little bit temporary. Now the other thing to expect is over time you're going to notice algae start to grow. There's various different types and colours of algae, but getting some catfish, once you start seeing algae, is a really good idea. You can get catfish with the little barbels in them and they'll scavenge on the gravel. And you get catfish with the sucker mouth and they help to suck all of the algae off the glass and off the ornaments. Now over time, this very colourful tank is going to start getting algae on these decorations. And one of the very best things to do is change the decorations around every now and then, because it definitely keeps you interested and it absolutely keeps the fish interested. So when you swap stuff around, it's like you just swap around their whole world and you give them a whole new world to explore. So that's something that I definitely encourage. So once you get algae all over your lovely fluorescent ornaments and the algae starts to make it look not as nice as it does, you put it out in the sun for a day and you'll find that the sun is a wonderful way of bleaching off and drying out the algae. Then you flip it over and leave it in the sun for another day or so. Then you hit it with a hose and you'd be quite surprised how well this stuff comes up. But also just remember that all of these ornaments, just consider they do have a bit of a shelf life. So after a period of years, they do actually look a bit tired, and it's probably not a bad idea just to swap it out and whack in some new ornaments, and that just keeps it nice and fresh and keeps you interested and keeps the fish interested. Now this aquarium is run on a filter and it also has an aerator. And it's really important that you have an aerator. The reason being is that the filter is eventually going to grow heaps of good bacteria, and the good bacteria that grows in the filter is going to suck oxygen out of the water. So that's why it's good to have the aerator, because the aerator is going to put oxygen back into the water. And it's also good to have a bit of contingency, because let's say somebody unplugs the heater, or if the heater the filter, or if the filter clogs or the filter decides to stop working, then quite a period of time the fish will still be fine, because the main thing the fish need is oxygen. So providing the fish got oxygen, then the fish will generally be fine. But you need to be very aware of your fish's behaviour. So when you walk up to your aquarium, your fish will behave a certain way. And if you find suddenly they're not behaving that certain way, then really you've got to let us know about it. So, because the fish will tell you, like the fish don't usually just die. The fish will give you plenty of warning. Now, if you don't heed that warning, you might lose your fish. But if you notice, hey, hang on, these fish are not doing what they were doing, then what we need you to do is grab your phone, make a little video, let us see what the fish are doing, and compare that to what the fish normally do, and you bring us a sample of water. We then can give you advice on how to fix it. because a lot of very commonly experienced diseases like white spot, bacterial infection, fungal infection, a lot of them are actually quite easily treated if quickly. So what we don't want to do is you say, oh, the fish have been a bit funny for a while, then they're going to start dying. We want to hear as soon as possible if the fish are acting funny, because we need to test up the water, because ultimately everything comes down to water quality or nutrition. So a lot of my job is going from person's house to person's house and advising and looking after their fish. And basically, this is what happens to me. I walk into one person's house, the fish look great, I test the water, and the water is pretty bad. Then I look in the cupboard and I find good quality food. So this one is New Life Spectrum's probiotics. It's a cold extruded food. I think it's very, very high quality. It has very good ingredients. Or Danichi Color, I love that one. That's a slow cooked food. So basically, I walk into a house, fish look great, water quality is bad, good quality food. And very often I go to the very next house and the fish are all dying, and I test the water. It's much better than the last house. And I look in the cupboard and sure enough, it's processed crap food. So what food you choose is something that I'll really say is half of fish keeping. And over the years, I've just decided that I think Danichi Color and Spectrum's probiotics is definitely my favorite. The other thing to be aware of is how much to feed. So I generally want to feed my fish about 5 times a week, and I want them to eat all the food in 30 seconds. I do not feed every day. Then over time, I want to be looking at my fish's belly. And if you look at where the anus is to the gill plate, under the gill plate, if that's going up, concaved, that's bad. That means you're not feeding enough. So then I want you to feed a little bit more, and then over a month or so, I want to see that fatten up a bit. But if you look at where the anus is, just at the start of the anal fin to the gill plate underneath the fish, if you see a belly, then you're probably feeding too much. Now, you also need to be aware of different fish and their feeding habits. For example, if all your fish look good, then you don't have a problem and you don't have to fix it. On the other hand, let's say that Mr. Oscar here is getting skinny and all the rest of the smaller ones are fine, then you probably need some bigger pellets, because the smaller pellets may not be doing the job for the Oscar. On the other hand, if the Oscar is nice and fat and all the little guys are getting skinny, maybe you need some smaller pellets for the smaller fish, because maybe the Oscar's monopolizing the bigger pellets. So what I want you to be aware of is some food floats, some food sinks. Some food's big, some food's small. So at the end of the day, we might need to end up getting a range of different foods to make sure that everyone is happy. That's actually not common. Generally, one food does all the fish, but we just want to be aware that we're looking at the belly of the fish, and then over a period of months, not quickly, we need to be addressing the belly of the fish.